Welcome to the Minimalist CEO Podcast with Nate Lindquist. Nate created the Minimalist CEO method to help business owners redefine and grow their businesses by finding new demand in places they never thought to look, where there's no competition. By following his opposite thinking strategy, Nate's coaching clients have grown their business up to 40% in just 2 months and created tens of millions of dollars in revenue. Nate himself has launched more than 140 businesses. On the show, Nate interviews successful business owners and experts who share the secrets you can use to have a better business and a better life.
Hey everyone, this is Nate Lindquist here. Welcome to the Minimalist CEO Podcast. I'm excited to introduce our guest. This guy is the coach to the residential home builders, construction business owners, business in that space. He just has the answers, understands the problems, the myths, the challenges, whether it's cash flow or getting the right team members or keeping momentum. So without further ado, Russ Stephens, thank you, Russ, for being on the podcast. I'm pumped to have you here.
Hey, Nate, thanks so much for having me on. I'm really excited to be chatting with you today.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's great to have you here. And I just, you're here and I can tell you, I work with some builders. I've worked with several builders over the years. I know that, you're dealing with people who build homes, residential homes. This is where people live. It's even rental communities. It's how people's lives, they all revolve around where they go home to. We got to keep the builders sharp. So as we get started, I would love to know, let's get right down to the essential, which is what this podcast is all about. How'd you get into this business? How'd you become a coach to residential home builders and construction business owners? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I guess the story really started back when I was 19 and living in England. And at the time I'd been working for my father in a retail shop, and I wanted to get out of that. So I left that and got a van and literally drove around South London selling out of the back of a van to other retailers. And that was my first business. And I then grew that business over the next 20 odd years into a wholesale distribution company that employed 50 people and had annual sales in excess of 35 million. And we moved on from that in 2006 because we wanted to emigrate to Australia. So that was always the master plan. So after a lifetime in one industry, we had to sell the home, sell the business, and move to Australia and really look for something new to do, because at the time Australia wasn't taking people in on investment visas. You had to come in and create a business and create jobs. So I certainly I didn't want to go back into what I'd been doing. And construction, like in most countries, it was very, very big in Australia. There's a strong culture in Australia of people building investment homes. So I thought, this is an industry that has got future growth, behind it. So it could be a good thing to get into. So started getting involved in the construction industry on a number of different levels, and which ultimately resulted in me finding my way to teaching builders really how to generate more leads, how to close those leads into sales, and to improve their margins.
Wow. So I just want to go back. So you were selling, you're teaching builders, business owners who are in the construction space, but you were selling retail out of the back of a van. You eventually shifted into a wholesale distribution business. You got to expand on that, man. Like, how old were you? You were selling.
Yes.
Go back
I started at 19, and by the time I was 30, I'd grown the business to what was a 10,000 square foot operation. And what that teaches you, it's high turnover and low margin. So I think those kind of businesses teach you a lot about business, because you've got to be organized, you've got to be systemized, you've really got to know your numbers and you've got to be watching every single dollar and cent, really. Otherwise, it's very easy to make a loss. And not too dissimilar from the construction industry, where builders do work on high revenue and low margins. And
What were you selling? What were you selling out of a van?
So we specialized in household cleaning and toiletries. So yeah, very low value products, but it's all about volume. Yeah, volume, volume, volume. So you had to move a lot of boxes around just to make a very small profit.
Room for error. You had no room to make mistakes. I mean, what was your margin? What's your profit margin on toiletries and cleaning products?
Well, unbelievably, when I started, cash and carry was the business model, and I kind of came into it. I knew I couldn't compete with the big cash and carries, and so what I did was I started delivering, hence driving around selling off the back of the van. And my thought behind this was I looked at the retailers, and they had a van parked up that they used once, maybe twice a week. And that van was then just parked up for the rest of the week, where they would go out to the cash and carry. Yeah, they would stock up their shop. So my idea was to actually bring the cash and carry to the retailers and cut out the need to do that. And when you've got an established culture, I guess, within an industry, it's not always easy to change that mindset. But at the time, because the cash and carry operation was so efficient for wholesalers, they were working on 5%. Yeah, that is just insane, 5-6%. So I had to go out and actually deliver the goods for 5 or 6%, which I couldn't make money out of, but I knew if I could grow it to a certain level, and then people would become dependent on the service, I could then start to increase the margins by 1% and then another 1%. And if I could just get to 7.5%, I could really make this model work. But it did, I did need big volume to do it. And funny enough, over the years, the model did change. Retailers started to sell off their vans because they couldn't see the logic in having a van sitting there for a week. And by the time the business kind of hit maturity, I guess, we had 8 trucks on the road, like say 50 staff. And then the margins, they did get a lot higher, and the whole industry changed, really. Cash and carries were a thing of the past, and it was wholesale distribution companies that were the only things that existed.
Wow. And you got that business up to $35 million by 5 or 6% margin to work with.
Well, by the time we were up to that level, we actually got our margins up to about 11.8%. Is kind of where we were sitting, and that allowed for a nice lifestyle, and a good slick operation, where you could operate out of nice premises, have nice offices, pay good wages to the staff, because of the sheer volume involved. The model kind of worked, but I must admit, I didn't envisage that model when I first started. That was just, that would have been fairy tale stuff when I started. I was just looking to earn a wage, I guess.
How did you stick it through? I mean, I think of any business, if you're operating with like a 5 or 6% margin, you make a couple of mistakes, you're out of business. So how did you decide to grind it out, and what helped you stick with that for the number of years that you did? And it sounds like was it 10 years? Is that correct?
No, I actually started back in 84. So by the time I sold, I was saying 20, it's more like 28 years by the time I actually sold the business. So, Sorry, Nate?
Were you in your late 30s when you sold it?
Yeah, so I was early 40s when I sold that business. So I would have been about 42. When I sold that business. Probably stayed in it too long, and knowing what I know now, this was a declining industry. This was an industry that was getting tougher and tougher. A lot of distribution companies were going out of business, so we were kind of growing into their space. But I look back now and I think, wow, if I had my time again, I'd go into a growth industry. It is so much easier when you're riding the wave.
But you did okay when you sold it, and you put yourself in a position where you could leave the country and go to Australia where you wanted to live.
Oh, absolutely. Very, very grateful for the business. It set us up for life. And we were in a lovely position where we probably didn't need to work again, but because we were moving country, those were the rules. You had to start a business. So bit the bug and got back involved. And so at that point we've moved to Australia and decided to get involved in construction. And got involved in the residential construction industry, and we're building high-end custom homes. So I'm not a builder myself. I had obviously a qualified project manager with a builder's license, and I focused on the business side. And I was just amazed at just how much can go wrong in a building company. The large amounts of revenue, of turnover, and the small amounts of profit involved, and the complexity of it all, which was far more complex than anything I'd done before in terms of distribution. But the one good thing, the one good thing about building new homes was that it was cash flow positive. So it generated huge amounts of positive cash flow, which I came to realize not many people understood in the industry at all. And so you had to be right across your numbers to be able to track that cash flow, so it didn't get out of hand.
Wow. I think that's interesting. If you talk about going from the distribution space, going into leaving the country, starting a high-end custom home business, and you're basically going to a completely different business. But what you said earlier was interesting. You said you've got to know your numbers, you've got to be organized, and you really have to stay on top of things. And so by taking those strengths that you had in organizing distribution, you were able to start to build a successful business in building in high-end homes.
Yeah. And the one thing that I did have to learn about that I hadn't been too exposed to before was marketing and sales process, because in distribution, we were in a very niche market, and I guess we were more order takers than salespeople, really, and there was no real marketing going on because the niche was kind of so small. You kind of targeted everyone in the niche, but
so you had built-in demand, and one of the things
that's right.
Like if we have something in Minimalist CEO called the predictable demand method, and we tell people, listen, if there's demand already there and it's underserved, put your product in front of them and they will buy it. So you had that built in the distribution business, at least for a while.
Yeah. And it's funny when I look back, because it's completely the opposite to what we teach now. But that distribution business was a commodity business because we were selling brands. So by definition, these were commodities. So it was all about price. So that is the only way you could compete. There was a bit of value there, i.e. the delivery side of things was the value, I guess, that we inadvertently introduced. But once all the cash and carries moved over to a distribution model, that USP was gone. So we did find ourselves in a commoditized market, whereas in construction, especially custom homes, that is really not a commodity. Sometimes we allow ourselves to believe it is, because consumers who maybe struggle to differentiate between two different quotes, they'll try and commoditize it by saying this builder's $50,000 cheaper. But the fact that they can't compare their quotes means it's not a commodity business. So we just have to be better at explaining where the value is in the quote.
So I'd love it if you can share with me then some of the strategies that are improving the growth. I know you said, I've done a little research here. You're actually helping double and sometimes even triple the growth of building companies. If I'm not mistaken, you have a process where you can help the builders focus on getting to $10 million or more at 10% net as well, which is a heck of a goal, I think, if I think of the builders who I've talked to be able to, keep 10% net at $10 million. So what are some of the strategies that are helping you do that? I mean, how can you create that kind of certainty and progress in a builder's world?
Yeah, so the 10 million at 10% net, this is part of our private mentoring program where we work one-on-one with custom home builders and large scale renovation companies. And it's a set process, and it's not an overnight fix. There's a lot of complexities to setting up and running a successful residential construction business. And you've got to be good in all areas. You know, you've got to have your marketing nailed. You've got to have your sales process nailed. You need your pricings, your margins, your financials. You need to be all across that, and you also have to be all across your operations. But the final piece of the jigsaw, if you're serious about taking your building company to the next level, and to heights that you maybe didn't believe were possible because you've maybe been in the industry, a few years, and after that, a bit of disillusionment can start to set in. And if you kind of look at this and think, it's just not possible to get to those levels at those kind of margins. One of the big components that we do work on as well with builders is mindset, because without the right mindset, you're simply not going to be able to progress through the levels, and they are levels. There's 10 levels that we have, which will take a residential building company to 10 million at 10%. So although we do deal with building companies doing 60, 70, 80 million a year in revenue, typically when we look at those companies, they're not making 10%. So they might have hit the revenue target, but they need help with realizing their net margin, getting their net margins up. But a lot of the guys that we do work with, they kind of find themselves stuck in the $3 or $4 million mark, and they're on a bit of a treadmill. They don't have enough time. They're finding it difficult to bring on more resources, more staff that can take the burden off them, because their margins are too low. So this is why everything's connected. They're time poor because they don't have enough resources. They don't have enough resources because their margins are too low. Their margins are too low because they're not systemized, because they're not generating enough demand. So it isn't a quick fix, which is why there are 10 levels. But we've been working with builders a long time now. So although every builder's situation is unique, we do have a tested pathway really to get them to that level.
Oh. And as part of what you're doing to help reach more builders and help them see what's possible for their business, you co-founded the Association of Professional Builders. Now, how did that come about?
Yeah, that's an interesting story, because after actually being in the residential construction industry myself, we hit the GFC in 2009, 2010, and custom home building just dried up. And the problem with the model that I'd created, because I wasn't a builder, it did rely on infrastructure, employing a lot of other people, which meant we needed a lot of revenue to make the model work. So it could see very soon, very quickly, that the model wasn't sustainable through a 2 or 3 year downturn. So started looking at other ways, to generate an income. And one thing that I'd learned a lot about and become very good at was the whole front end on custom home building, the marketing and the sales. So there was a lot of knowledge there. So what we started doing was actually generating contracts of not so much the higher end, which we'd specialized in, but more of the lower end, and actually passing those contracts on to builders. And what I realized when we did that we were passing on contracts to builders at margins that they'd never even got close to before. So we would take a commission, obviously, for we were like a builder's broker, and we would then pass that on to builders, and they'd be working on margins that they'd just never seen before, even though we were taking a cut ourselves. And that led to discovering a system in the US called Co-Construct, which was a project management tool for builders. And it blew my mind when I saw this system, or when I heard about it. I remember getting up at 3:30 in the morning to attend a webinar. with Donnie Wyatt, the founder of Co-Construct. So I could see what this software did, and it was just perfect because it allowed people to communicate with consumers, allowed the builders to communicate with consumers online, plus all their subcontractors. And I was so blown away by it that we actually became the licensee for Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. So we'd provide all the tier 1 support, we'd do all the marketing, we'd do all the sales, and that really exploded. We signed up a lot of builders over the next few years, and got into a lot of building companies, as a result of that. Really built up a good relationship and a big database of custom home builders. And after.
Can I jump in for a second? Because
sure.
I think what you've just described, you make it sound so simple, Russ. It's like, and then we just found a company that had the project management for builders. So we decided your ability to see opportunity inside that's brilliant. So I want to, if we could just take a second, look a little bit, just dive a little bit deeper. You're in the high-end custom home building. There's a bit of a downturn in the market, and you're trying to find a way to continue to scale and grow your business. Plus you're looking to help builders grow. So one of the avenues you take is to connect with co-construct a project management system. And in doing so, you start brokering. Is that correct? You start brokering.
Well, we were brokering before, and that kind of, opened our eyes really to see the opportunity that Co-Construct was presenting, which was, this was around about 2011, 2012. It was very new at the time, project management software. Not many builders knew about it. They only had 3 builders in Australia and New Zealand using Co-Construct at the time. So I think in the US, it had been out for a couple of years and was probably getting a little bit more traction, but completely unheard of in Australia and New Zealand, the fact that there was this dedicated software for builders.
So so let's go back again. So you're talking about the strength you had in sales and marketing. You're doing high-end custom home building, but you're primarily the marketing and the sales engine because you're not a builder.
That's right.
So is there a mindset shift here where you took the mentality and said, listen, we're going to get really, really good at packaging building projects, and then we're going to get really, really good at connecting with people who can do the construction. We're going to become the marketing piece. We're going to become the project management piece. And if you're really good at that and have the mindset of finding opportunities and packaging opportunities and understanding how to capitalize on the margin, build the new relationships, then at that point, you're able to create the profit. Is that what you did as you built this association?
Yeah. I think there's a saying that the opportunity of a lifetime comes along every week. So you kind of don't want to be throwing all your eggs in one basket and just overcommitting to one thing. But equally, you need to be aware that there's opportunities all around us all the time. And in that respect, I've been very fortunate the way the pieces of the jigsaw kind of connected and took us along this path. Even the adversity of what happened in the GFC, it kind of puts you on a different path and a different trajectory that leads you to an even bigger goal. But all of the knowledge along the way has been absolutely critical, crucial really to where we find ourselves now, because it gave us a deep insight into the operations of a building company, how to run a building company systematically, which it's without the right systems, it's incredibly hard, especially a custom home building company, to run that profitably. There's so many things that just eat away at your net profit, that they come out left to center.
Mm. What we tell our clients regularly, as you're talking about this, and I'm thinking about it, is to take the time to get organized and just become absolutely fascinated with how you're helping your clients. And I see the builders who we work with and either other business owners, they're so busy trying to deliver that they miss the opportunities to reach out, find new business, to find out what their audience is struggling with, to get good at marketing, to get good at sales. As a matter of fact, there's very few builders or people in the construction space at all that I've seen are really any good at that at all. They're relying heavily on bigger building companies or referrals. They talk about the strength of word of mouth. So in building this association of professional builders, becoming a coach to these contractors, how have you helped them move from being so busy doing the do to looking out for opportunities and helping to grow the business, not being too busy to market, not being too busy to sell?
Yeah, even that itself became a bit of a process and a journey, I guess, because we never really set out initially to create the Association of Professional Builders. We didn't at that point think, okay, we've got all the answers here. We can actually present this to builders. What was happening really, as we were dealing with a lot of custom home builders, getting them started on Co-Construct and helping them to set up the systems, what we found was, sure, Co-Construct, they were using project management software because they were time poor. They were stressed. They couldn't plan their jobs, schedule their jobs properly. They were having communication problems with clients. But once you put the system in place that began to solve those problems, all we heard was the same thing. I just need more leads. I'm not getting enough leads. I'm not getting enough quality leads. And invariably, we would look at their website when we had those conversations and realize that their website was no more than a brochure site. It wasn't a lead generation website. And also, just the whole way that they were communicating and talking to potential clients. The whole industry had changed, really. The internet had seen to that, and the balance of power had been switched on its head. So typically, previously, what had happened is you'd go to a builder and they'd drip feed you information. Now consumers were doing all their research online, and they were approaching builders armed with more knowledge than at any time in history. And a lot of builders hadn't really reacted to that. They hadn't adapted. And so what we did, we started just giving advice whenever builders, were telling us about that problem, because they were our clients. So we wanted to just help them as much as we can. So we kind of talked to them about their website, what they needed to be doing. They needed to be putting a lead magnet front and center so they could get the opt-ins. They needed more information. They needed a blog so that consumers could do research in their own time, and that would build up trust and authority. And then they would opt in and have good conversations. So we talked to them about that, but invariably they still struggled to do it. So that led us to set up a marketing company which designed and built websites for builders, but also we managed their lead generation as well. So we would manage Facebook campaigns, Google ad campaigns. We'd do search engine optimization for them. And we even developed a CRM system specifically for builders as well, which had all the emails inside it, which they needed to nurture. So we were helping builders to systemize by actually introducing them to Co-Construct, but now we were helping them with their front end as well by generating quality leads for their business. And I guess that was kind of the first step towards APB. And that company was called Acris Services, and it was a dedicated marketing agency for builders. But what we realized was it didn't matter how many leads we generated for some guys, they were still struggling. So we could run the same process for two different builders, and one would be incredibly busy, and the other would be saying the leads are rubbish. These are nothing like the leads I used to get. I used to close 1 in 2 leads. These leads, I talk to them, they don't know who I am. The leads that you generate are rubbish.
So as you're saying, I'm hearing a lot of familiarity here in almost every business that I talk to who calls Minimalist CEO. because it's like, what's essential? You got to have lead acquisition, you got to have lead conversion, you have to know your production capability, and you have to be able to stop and look back from outside the bottle for each one and say, how are we doing? Now, I noticed in the building industry, especially, they started evolving into, hey, I have a website, like you said, a brochure site, but they became a service card. And I'd say, okay, well, what are you offering? You talked about a lead magnet a minute ago. What are you offering other than just a list of your service? I'd say, well, okay, I want to have you build a home for me. What are you going to offer? And they start listing the equipment they have, the staff they have, and they go down their service card. Yeah. And so in getting a builder to have a lead magnet and then incorporating that, of course, into now your coaching, your guidance, the CRM, and I think where you're going is sales training and conversion training, possibly. Am I right?
So, that's it, yeah.
How do you get a builder to say, like, you're going to craft an offer and you're going to learn to close? You're going to learn to enroll people, indoctrinate people into your business. How do you get them out of that service card mentality into like becoming a marketing and sales machine?
Yeah, well, like you've just alluded to, it really is all about the sales process. And I think the first step in getting builders to work on that and improve that is to identify the problem, because we had half of our builders doing very well and the other half still struggling despite the fact they had quality leads. So we started analyzing what was going wrong, what was the gap, and we realized the guys that were struggling didn't have a sales process. The guys that were doing well, they were having quality leads generated for them, and they had a sales process to turn those leads into contracts. But the guys that never had a documented process were reactive and working ad hoc. These were the ones that were struggling and were then saying that the leads were rubbish. So we quickly realized that what we had to do was develop a sales process for these guys that they could implement into their building companies. And that was why we launched a new service called Actress Sales Training back in 2014. And that was all about the sales blueprint for builders. We mapped out the whole process from start to finish as to how you attract a quality lead and how you then turn that lead into a contract and ultimately into a raving fan that's going to be referring you to their friends and family.
Well, Russ, I think it's brilliant to bring the sales process into it. And as you're going along, we only have a short amount of time before we wrap up the interview for today. But we've covered a lot of good stuff. And I think one of the challenges that I've seen, and I think we're going to hear from some of our listeners, is if they're in a small service business, and you talk about having a sales process written down, I feel as though with a lot of small service business owners, you could even spoon feed them, train them. But when you talk about the builders, in a lot of cases, you're talking about a handful of people who are way too busy to stop and focus on a sales process. And inevitably, it's like the founder, the owner who's doing the estimate, who's wearing too many hats, and maybe they're caught up in that. I think you talked about the $1 million to $3.5, $4 million range. I'm seeing that too. How do you get them to see the value and then put the salesperson in place so there's someone to train who's actually going to do it, that isn't too busy to do it? I've noted, for me, that's the hurdle that I've seen a lot of them. I've seen different approaches to get the builder to put that person in place, allow them to be trained, not just in building, not just in what he wants them to do, go and get us some business. But am I thinking about that right? Don't they need to get that other person trained or get a department, a business development department?
Well, they can, and at some point, they've certainly got to, but really it's all about playing to your strengths. And some builders are really, really good at sales. So it's probably one of the last things that they'll let go of. Whereas other guys, as you know, there's a lot of builders that simply hate the whole sales side. And that's one of the first things that they want to let go. But the most important thing is Sorry?
You're working 18-hour days, and I think
absolutely, yeah. So one thing, and this is where it gets really hard to figure this all out on your own, and it's why, as a business owner, you've got to be working with a business coach that can guide you through the hoops, because it's Life's too short to try and figure this all out on your own. It takes way too long. And one thing we talk about a lot to builders is the S-curve. Now, we all like to think that if we can just get a bit more revenue in our building company, we're going to make more money. And we've got this nice straight linear line. And ultimately, we're going to get to 10 million at 10%. But it doesn't work like that. We have what we call the S-curve, which is a series of S's. And what that means is we have to actually go backwards before we go forwards to the next level. So we'll actually hit this glass ceiling, which most guys have experienced. Yeah, they know what it's like. Yeah, they're working, like you say, 18 hours a day, Nate. And they can't seem to push through to the next level. And that's because they haven't learned to delegate. They haven't brought a salesperson on, like you say, or brought someone in a different area of the business. But the thing is, you have to bring those resources on, which will obviously deteriorate your net profit. And you've got to be comfortable with that because you're looking at the big picture. And this is where a lot of mindset comes into place. But when you do that and you bring a great salesperson on, and you've got to have the process for sure. But you've got your process in place. You bring the salesperson on. You then monitor that they're following the process. You're going to go into a little bit of a dip. It will feel like you're going backwards, but then you're going to power forward to the next level. And then we do it all over again. We go backwards to go forwards.
That's awesome. Well, I think this is really helpful. This is great insight. And I think that it's also a validation, Russ, that not only have you been through this, you're able to jump into another industry after having a tremendous amount of success and spending years struggling at a 6 to 11.8% margin distribution business. Now you're the advisor and coach to builders and those in the construction industry. And they're hearing that, hey, you do have to invest. You have to have a mindset that says getting these extra resources in place, investing in sales, having a process, understanding how to look at the numbers, having a CRM. That's one of the first things we help our clients put into place. And that's just huge. It's like, get this out of your head, get it written down, get it entered into a system. You've offered just a ton of value today for our listeners. And I think any one of the tips that you've shared is something that anyone listening, any of our listeners can say, listen, I need to take a closer look at that. So if they want to get in touch with you, Russ, to learn more, ask questions, what's the best way for our listeners to reach out to you?
Yeah, Nate. So what I've done is I've set up some resources for your listeners. So if they'd like to go to apbbuilders.com/the Minimalist CEO, what I've done is I've put together the sales blueprint for builders that they can download. So this is the proven sales process that they can follow. They can also access free training for builders. There's 5 or 6 different free trainings on there as well that they can access. They can join our Facebook group, they can access our blog, and they can even take a look behind the scenes inside the APB members area to see the resources that are available for our members. And of course, if they like what they see, they can even join the APB there as well.
Awesome. Now your APB, your Association of Professional Builders, is that global? How many countries are involved with that?
Yeah, so we're in 5 countries at the moment. We're in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the US, and the UK. We have team members on the ground across Australia and the US. So we're servicing both those time zones.
Wow, that's fantastic. So it sounds like a great place for them to check it out. We're going to put that information down on the show notes too. Russ Stephens, the advisor and coach to builders. So if you're looking to take your construction company from wherever it is right now to $10 million or more, you said you're working with some that are doing $50+ million, get it to 10% net and get the systems in place, know how to follow the numbers and double or grow your business beyond that. Russ Stephens is the guy. So thanks for being on the Minimalist CEO podcast. I appreciate that, Russ.
Thanks so much, Nate. I love chatting with you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I look forward to talking to you again. Everyone, thanks for joining us at the Minimalist CEO podcast. And again, more information and resources will be made available from this episode in the show notes. And thanks for coming along.